presenting to you today in Brisbane on Niagara and Turrbal land, and today I'm going to tell you about my work as a composer, an improviser, a flutist, and a performer who works with everyday objects. So I'm a composer-performer, which means that I compose with the intention of performing my own work. I think this gives me a bit of freedom and interpretation, and it also means that I can add improvisatory elements to the works that I write. Most of what I do is very visual, so I'm concerned primarily with the sounds of everyday objects, but also their appearance and their tactile qualities, and how this might be interpreted in a musical way. Some of my works look at practices close to performance art or embodied practices, which means that the physical motions of my body within space interacting with objects are important to how a work may unfold. This can include riding a skateboard across a stage, or doing something very physical like playing or going bowling, something that involves interaction with the space, but always objects as well. Object puppetry is another element that I like to explore in my work. This is Pete, and this is also Pete. They're two finger puppets that they feature in many of my works. Sometimes they make a lot of noise, and sometimes they don't make any noise. But they've got this kind of lifelike quality. There's a bit of uncanniness to a still object, right? So their eyes kind of, you never know what they're going to get up to. So this is a way of bringing together an everyday object with a personification through puppetry. And I wouldn't call myself a sound artist, but often small objects require visual and oral amplification. So electroacoustic amplification is often necessary for what I do, but this is pretty much the extent that I typically work with everyday objects. Where might you have seen an everyday object in a music performance before? If you've seen or heard someone play a prepared piano, there are objects inside the piano that make all of those fun and unexpected sounds. They could be made of metal or rubber or plastic, and they're placed on the strings in very methodical ways. The interface of the piano is kept consistent, so the keyboard is still played as normal in most cases, but the sounds are altered. So this is a way of reimagining a conventional musical instrument. If you've ever seen a percussionist play a found object in any scenario, in staged music, in chamber music, this is another way that you may have seen an everyday object. Also, it's very difficult nowadays to go to an experimental or sound art performance and not hear or see an everyday object being amplified or explored in ways most often outside of its function. So yeah, something that's not new, but always a bit unexpected. I play the flute, right? So I trained as a flautist. Still really like playing it, but I also work with everyday objects. And why is that? It's because I find objects to be very comical. I think that there's a lot of potential for laughter and storytelling. There's a relatability. There's the unexpected. You never really know what's going to happen or what's anything could go wrong or right. Everyday objects can reflect our current life. We can listen to the sounds of our own life and reflect on how, why or how or where these sounds are being made. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. You can find your own personal identity through sound just by listening to the everyday objects that are around you. Okay, so you may be wondering, how can I make some music with everyday objects? I'm going to give you a few techniques that may help you interpret how objects can become musical, or how you can play with them. And I think play is such an important part of it. Don't be fooled. Most of these things could be thought of as toys, which is fine. Where do we get these objects? People give these objects to me. I think they know that I really love playing with toys. So you could, go around your house. Maybe you find some stuff in your desk drawer, or maybe you go to your kitchen. But the first thing that you need to do is think about functionality. And objects can be very functional, like this cup of tea. You can think about the sounds that drinking tea out of a mug could make. Think about pouring hot water, boiling, bubbling hot water onto your tea bag. It's almost a satisfying sound, like it's gonna be a soothing cup of tea. Or think outside its function. So functionality. I think we could consider this spoon. I'm not making soup. I'm not eating ice cream or scooping ice cream. I guess I could. Maybe should be. But I'm instead thinking about the handle and the metal and how these bells are placed in the spoon, and how also the function of the spoon could help out placing those bells inside that cup. So there's functionality. You can subvert functionality, or you could stay well within the border of functionality. And then the next step you could consider is the material that it's made out of. So, like I just described, metal, or you could have plastic, or it could be a latex balloon. I don't know, like anything goes, really. It's fine. So you could consider how these objects might sound in different combinations. So we just had, 3 very metal objects, 3 very metal objects. They make a distinct sound. The third way of assessing the objects in your life is through playability. So, do you have to hit or strike or scrape something for it to make sound? We've got 2 tones going on there. Can you use air to make sound? Or like squeaky toys, do they require air? I think they would be. Or maybe there's some string or something, a rubber band that could be plucked. I don't have any of that here, but yeah. Along with playability is also think about how sounds can be layered. So with wind-up toys, I really love that there can be multiple things going on. Multiple sounds. There's a bit of a, that's, okay. So yeah, there's material, functionality, playability. Is it a chordophone, an aerophone, an idiophone? So do you pluck it? Does it need air? Is it percussive? All these things are possible. And then there's one final step, which is if you are an instrument player, how an object could interact with your instrument. So this is maybe an optional step. I'm not gonna limit this to only instrumentalists, but consider how an object could go on top or inside, or dangle from, or alter the sound of. You could do different combinations of the setup of your instrument. Yeah, really reimagining your strengths as an instrumentalist and how you can rediscover sounds that can be made with additions to your instrument. So I'll now give a little demonstration. I'll improvise with some or all of these objects and yeah, create a little piece.